Hi guys, I'm Katie, and we wanted to show you a cool feature of how you can invite your friends to watch online with you while you're watching the live stream. You can click on this plus button where it will pull up a list of your friends where you can invite them to join you in watching the live stream. You can do the same on your mobile device. So if you go to this share button here, you will be given a list of your friends where you can send them an invite to watch along with you while you're watching the live stream. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and we hope you stay connected with us, and make sure to like our Facebook page so that you can get all of the updates on what's happening here at Family Church. Hi guys, I'm Katie, and we at Family Church wanted to show you guys how to give on our live stream website. At live.ourfamily.church, you will see the option to give online on the right-hand side of your screen. You will be taken to a safe environment where you can see that your connection is secure. There are two options when you go to give. You can give one time or set up a reoccurring gift. So that's it, but we really want to know how we can support you and your family during this time. So please let us know, and we'll continue to be praying for you guys.
Hello everyone, it's Wednesday and it's another installment of Tell Your Story. We got some very special guests with us here today. But first, a few things. You got to hit that share button. And why do you need to hit that share button? Because this shows other people that are watching your feed what you're watching, and then hopefully they'll be watching and they will be inspired and maybe their life will be changed. That's right. Share if you care. Here's the other thing, so important. Sign up for services tomorrow. Yes, we are opening. All of our campuses are opening with social distancing, but we need to know who's coming so that we can put limits on the amount of people in a room. So sign up. They'll be available at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Go to the website, go to the campus, sign up right there. And then finally, thank you for giving. Giving allows us to do this and so many other things that we're doing throughout the week. And it's very, very simple to give at give.ourfamily.church. You know, as we always say about telling your story, it's important that we know what it is that Jesus has done in our life. And so there's a way to be able to present that. And we do that by understanding sort of the three phases of story in our life. The first one is what we were like before Christ, and then what happened when we met Christ. And at the end, we sort of tell people, what is our life with Christ like right now? It's all very biblical. If you go to the Old Testament, it tells you there very clearly of what that means. And if you go to Psalms, it says, let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. You have been redeemed. You've been saved. Now go tell people that story. And then 2 Corinthians 3 says this, that you are a letter from Christ. He has written a letter, the story, the physical story of what he has done in your life. And so we thought, who better to come and tell their story but some of the people you know and love, the staff here at Family Church. And so we have Nick Gels, we have Tony Hevner, and we have Dr. Charles Cooper. So we're going to tell our stories of how we came to know Christ, all very different. The similarity between all of them is Jesus, but they're all different in different ways. So let's start with you, Tony.
All right. Well, it's good. I always feel, I've always felt very blessed because I can't remember a time in our family history where we didn't have someone that was a follower of Christ actively in the church. And so I actually accepted Christ as a child. I remember being
how old?
5 years old.
5? Wow.
I was 5 years old. We had some kind of, it was, I remember correctly, it's been a while, kind of a children's revival happening. I remember going forward, and all I knew at that moment is that I needed Jesus. I wanted Jesus. And so I prayed to accept him, and then I've had the privilege of growing up in the church, but with that, you know, I was that perfect church kid. I grew up, I knew when to stand, when to sit. I knew when it was right to come forward to the altar and everything. And I played that perfect game growing up as a teenager. Going back, I was president of FCA and stuff in high school. And so I knew everything to say and everything to do. But the difference was, as I was growing up as a teenager in high school, my faith was always my parents' faith, my grandparents' faith. It was never really my faith. And so when I graduated high school in 1986, I went off to college, and I just made a conscious decision. Well, there's got to be other ways. This cannot be the only way. I've heard so much about so many things. And so I just decided to look into everything. I studied...
New Age was big.
New Age was huge back then. Every ism that you could think of, Buddhism, Islam, everything, Confucianism, I just studied it all. I just said, there's got to be, this can't be the only way. And at 19 years old, I was kind of rock bottom, just really wasting my time in college, not doing what I was supposed to do. I majored probably more in fraternity than I did any other class back then. Just saying, God, none of this makes sense but you. You know, every other religion, every other belief system that I've looked into, it's all about, am I good enough? Did I do enough works? Did I do this? Jesus, you're the only one that said you were good enough for me. And so really, the way I look at it now in my life is that, at 5 years old, I met Jesus.
Right.
But it was at 19 when I surrendered to him.
And it was a comparative study that really did it for you, just laying it all out there on the desktop. And so to say, where all these other ones match up.
That is, and it's always, to this day, there is no one on this planet that's going to convince me that Jesus is not the way. Just because that is the difference between probably other world religion and our faith in Christ, is that every other religion, every other belief system, it's what I do. And so I was constantly looking at that saying, well, was I good enough? Am I doing the right things and stuff? Where I love, Paul says, I am saved by grace, not by works. so that I don't have anything to boast about. It's all what God has done in my life and everything. And that just gave me a freedom. And from that point on, at 19, I gave myself, surrendered, and I found myself becoming a youth pastor at a little mission church. And it's been an adventure ever since.
Yeah. You know, many great theologians today started out that way, like a Josh McDowell's and that. C.S. Lewis, not C.S. Lewis, Strobel, Lee Strobel.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of. But it really started like, let's try to disprove it. Let me just try to find the loophole or something in it, and then end up finding nothing. And
it is, and I think that's what's driven my heart for ministry, is not only tell people this is what we believe, but we have to understand why we believe it. Because I just believe our faith, it's an intellectual faith, it's an emotional faith, it's all of that. It's a very holistic faith, but we have to understand this is why I believe what I believe.
I love that you tested your faith, and we were just talking about that in the messages. You've got to test it, put it up against some of the things in this world, and see that it falls short. You know, Jesus always wins.
Amen.
Cooper, you also came to know Jesus at a very early age.
I did. Seems to be the run of the wheel these days. 8 years old. Grew up in the, of course, in the '60s, and television in the '60s. 11:30, 12:05. The television went off.
Yeah.
And the television came on at 6 a.m. with the playing of the national anthem. And at 7 a.m. they'd have something, and then there would be a short period of cartoons, and then cartoons would go off, and then I had to put up with these Christian programs until the next cartoon, which was, of course, the Pink Panther. And I used to put up with James Robinson. He would come on first, and every week he'd do the same thing, preach the same sermon, basically. And then Rex Humbard would come on, and he would have an hour service. And then the First Baptist Church, Little Rock, would come on, and then finally cartoons, right before football at 12. So every Sunday was the same thing. And so, you know, you get up, you can't sleep, and so you just turn it on and just look and go mind numb. And so for 2 or 3 years, I heard every week the same message: Jesus died for your sins, you're a sinner, you need to repent. And if you would like to be saved, pray this prayer every week in, week out. And I became more interested in Rex Humbard because his family was there, his wife, whose name was Maud Amy, and Rex Jr., his son, and they were singers. And so he would come on, they'd do something nice, then they would sing some songs, then he would preach a sermon, and then he would give an invitation every week. And so after about 2 years of watching and listening, I wasn't paying any attention. Then all of a sudden, it was just one Sunday that he did it, and for the first time, I understood what he was talking about. Wow. It was amazing. I was a sinner. I wasn't saved. I hadn't asked Jesus to come into my heart, and I knew that I was a sinner. And so all that week, I was thinking about it. And I thought I had to wait until the next week. I didn't know you get saved without watching Rex, but
or the Pink Panther.
The Pink Panther. So the next week I was waiting for the program to come on, because I knew he's going to come on. He's going to do the announcements. He was going to do the song. He was going to be in the ask for some money. They were going to sing again, and then he was going to preach. And then at the end of the sermon, he was going to give people a chance to be saved. And so I was waiting the whole time, anxiously waiting for him to get to the part where he's going to ask you if you like to pray to receive Christ. You can, and when he did, I did, and I was so excited. In fact, I went to school the next day and told the teacher that I got saved. Wow. She thought I was insane. She didn't think I knew what I was talking about, but I did. I understood the gospel at 8 years old. Yeah, mm-hmm. I really understood the gospel. I understood why I needed a Savior. I understood why Jesus was the only Savior that you could be, and that you had to have faith. And you had to, if you sent in a letter, you could send in a letter and ask for, it was something kind of like first steps. you're a new believer. Here's the first thing you're supposed to do. And so I did. I wrote in a letter. I sent a little letter, and I got a stamp, and I sent it in to Rex Lombard Ministries, Cathedral of Tomorrow in Ohio. And they did. They sent me this little booklet thing that taught you kind of what it meant to be a saved and what it meant, how to know that you're saved. And that's basically it.
You're probably still on their mailing list.
I would be if he wasn't dead. He'd be still on there. Yes.
And so, but then you start preaching at a very early age too, right?
Yeah,
Like 15?
I got saved at 8. We were not going to church. My family wasn't going to church at that time. And at age 12, my best friend, I made a new best friend who just happened to be the son of the pastor of the leading Baptist church in town.
Okay.
And so he started inviting me to go to his church. And so at age 12, I did. Easter. I went on an Easter Sunday.
Okay.
And I didn't have an Easter speech because I didn't know you needed one. But if you had one, you get candy. So Jesus wept. Pretty good to me. And actually joined that church, was baptized. And then at age 15, I started preaching.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing. You knew everything you needed to know at the age of 8, and God had prepared you at 15 to start
15,
preaching. And interesting path, and ever since then,
Yeah.
you've been following that, and that's a great story. You know, it's so interesting to hear at such a young age. And I know, Nick, you're another one who started off very early, but some events sort of brought you closer.
It's similar to Tony, though, in that it started early, but it didn't stick until much later. You know, I grew up in Wisconsin, and so in Wisconsin, you choose your church based on who's going to get you out on time to see the Packer game, right?
Oh,
That's the
yes.
criteria. But we grew up Lutheran, and I'm very thankful. My parents were very faithful to going every Sunday, and it's the church that my dad's parents had gone to. You know, our family was known in that church for a long time, and so I went to Sunday school as a kid, and listened to all the Bible lessons, went through confirmation, something you do as a Lutheran. And if you would have asked me at that point in my life, are you a Christian? I would have said absolutely yes. But there was nothing there outside of Sunday morning. Outside of Sunday morning, there was nothing different about me. There was nothing important about it. I wouldn't really talk to my friends about it, nothing. But when I was 10 years old, we were in the process of moving from Wisconsin to Florida, and my mother was diagnosed with cancer. And she went from working a 70-hour-a-week job. She was very busy with work to now she couldn't work because of the treatments and everything from cancer, and so she was home. And it's something that as a kid I was very angry about, you know. But I watched my mom, and she always had this peace about her. And I would
What's your age?
ask her why. I'm sorry, I was 10. I was 10. Yeah, I was 10. And so I'd ask her, how can you be so calm in all of this? And she said, well, I'm just enjoying the time to slow down now. And she'd get up in the morning and she'd sit on the porch and she'd just enjoy being outside, and she'd write poetry, but most of all she was reading the Bible and reading a lot more than probably she had in a long time in her life. And so I was 10, 11, 12 years old, and my brother was 8, and she would take time to tell us about Jesus and this person, Jesus, that loved us. And again, even then it was still, even though I knew things about Jesus, it still didn't make sense to me, and it almost just made me more mad, because if Jesus loved us, why am I watching my mom go through this, And when I was 12 years old, she passed away, and man, it was a really hard time. I think the one thing that really kept me going for a little bit was I had an aunt come to me, and she said, Nick, you're going to really have to grow up fast, and you've got to be there for your brother, you got to be there for your dad, and that's just how life is right now. And so I kind of try to just take that on myself. I try not to think about me. I worried about my brother. I tried to be there for him.
That's still a 10, right?
This is 12 now.
12
years old.
That's a lot on a 12-year-old.
It was. It really was. And eventually that wasn't enough to motivate me really to keep going. And so I started trying to think about what else could there be? What else could there be out there for me? Because I felt really alone. I mean, that's just at 12 years old. Of course, my dad was there, my brother, but I felt very alone. My mom wasn't there anymore. And it's actually it's kind of funny to think about now, but I started reading the Left Behind books.
Oh, yeah.
And not talking about theology or anything else of those books. However, at 12 years old, those books scared me enough to start reading some things out of the Bible and start looking at some things in the Bible. And as I read, I came across just certain passages that my mom had shared with me, and things just started to click. And I mean, just there in that very broken moment, I accepted Christ, and I said, this is real. I need. By accept Christ, I said, Jesus, I need you. I need you to lead me. I need you to teach me, because my mom's not here anymore. I need to follow you. And then, man, I was on fire for Christ as a 12-year-old. That was my everything.
School? Did you
yes,
go to school
I went to school. I made friends that were Christians, and we talked about it. We had Bible study groups. I remember being 14 years old and running a Bible study group with a friend of mine.
Really?
We also sold Christian T-shirts on the side. They weren't very good.
Oh, it's all about the profit.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, no, but I even remember one time. I was doing volunteer work at the Florida Elks Lodge, and there was a girl my age also helping out there. And I remember thinking, hey, this girl's kind of cute, and trying to flirt with this girl a little bit. And then I was like, let me tell you about Jesus, And it was like, that's the one thing I wanted to do. I was on fire for Christ, and I thought I wanted to be a pastor when I grew up. I started to meet with the pastor of our church at the time, and we would meet every weeknight and talk. And after we'd been meeting for a few months, he said, Nick, the last advice I'll give you is, he said, if you can do anything else and tell people about Christ, go do that. And I said, oh, okay. And at first I kind of struggled with that. Like, are you telling me I'm not going to make a good pastor?
Yeah.
But that's not what it was. He was saying, if you can go out and be in the workforce and be in your school and tell people about Christ, go do that. And so I tried to do that for a long time. And I think I had a very similar story to you, Tony, that I got to a place where, I don't know, you can't really explain it, just wasn't important for a while. And I didn't go to college, so I majored by sneaking into fraternities and those kind of things. Did that similar thing. And
when you were 12, did you stay at the same Lutheran church? Did you find another church?
No, we moved down to
down
here. We did not attend a church pretty much the entire time my mom was sick. Okay. It was all just personal.
So when
in
you're
our
on
home.
fire,
yeah.
What was the church that was sort of helping?
It was a church in Claremont.
Claremont,
yeah,
okay.
It was a church in Claremont. And it was great. We went to Sunday night services there, and it was a good group of people. But then, you fast forward to, I went through a time where I chased after everything else but God, and I didn't put importance there, and kind of just turned my back on everything else that I knew.
Moment, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And but when I got to a place where I wasn't finding joy in any of that anymore, and again, I found myself almost in that same empty place that I was when I was 12, and I turned, and God was still there.
Yeah.
And that was really the biggest moment in my life of, okay, you were there for me when I was 12 and I needed you, but you're still here for me even though I thought I had turned my back and abandoned you.
Yeah.
And then the next few years were just a whirlwind. I met my wife, who, man, she straightened me out really quick, right, by the grace of God. And we've had a couple kids, and man, being a part of this church since 2013 has been incredible. We went from sitting in the seats and just being involved any way we could. My wife and I both helped out in children's. We got plugged into a Russell Slack small group. He continued to straighten me out.
Wow.
Russell does that really well,
didn't
right?
set you back, did it?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Okay.
I was asked to be a deacon, and that was an incredible place to serve. And then I had a chance to start meeting with Pastor Chuck on weeknights with a group of guys,
Right.
and he gave me a chance to stand on stage and preach, and it still blows me away every time I get that opportunity.
And you both came from those, the two of you had that background of you're working in the world, you still have, your jobs, Universal and Disney, and you're sort of doing the bivocational thing, well, whatever that is right now with everything going on, but you're still able to be the minister that you were called to be, and still maybe have that opportunity to spread the gospel wherever you are and wherever you're working.
Yeah, it's been neat too. I would love to be like just full-time focused, but it's been kind of a blessing too to be able to stand up in front of our campus and say, you are a missionary right where God has placed you. And so like what's neat at Universal is I'm not Pastor Tony, I'm Tony the pastor. And there's not a day that goes by that people don't come up like, hey, can you pray for me? Or, hey, I'm dealing.
Wow.
And it's almost become like a chaplaincy type thing there. And so it's been neat. And then to challenge our campus, our congregation, like, I'm doing it, you can do it, we can. This is where the church becomes real for people, because they're not necessarily going to come through those doors, but they're going to watch you at work and see how you live your life and give you an opportunity.
And that's an interesting theme here. There's part-time, Part-time. Part-time. I don't know if you're part-time.
Part-time.
Part-time, yeah. So we're all part-time here. We all have our other things that we're doing, but we feel the calling to be able to do this
Yeah,
at the same time.
absolutely. Yeah.
And
What about your story, Troy?
about my story?
Yeah.
How much time do we have? Not saved at an early age, like the rest of you. Went to church, went to a Lutheran church, went through confirmation. Remember having the party for confirmation. I was so excited. I got money because I went through this confirmation. And I also got this Bible, red letter, Jesus red letter, King James
Real Bible.
leather cover. I was like, wow, this is really nice. Took that thing, put it right on the shelf, and never opened it. Went through high school, I would say about 14, started drinking. It was very popular. Enjoyed life, went to parties. Everyone called my house, say, hey, Troy, where's the party tonight? Because I knew where all the parties were. And so I led a lot of people to the parties and everything, very social coordinator. That didn't stop when I got to college, because I went to the #1 party school, voted by Playboy, and that was the University of Georgia. They had just gotten that nomination, and I showed up to confirm it. And so I did a lot of partying, more drug intake during that time. And then, but I always did well in school. See, that was the thing. I was always I was a good student. I was always, getting A's and all those sort of things. And so it never really seemed like this whole party thing was really a problem. There was really no indication that I needed to stop any of it, right? I'd make a lot of friends because of it. Left there, went to California, because that was really the dream, to get into television and to write or direct or whatever it is for movies. Worked on a lot of really cool things during that time, but the drinking escalated and the drugs escalated. And it got to a point that one night I was working on a game show. We had our 100th show, I remember. So you always celebrate the 100th show, and I'm driving back on the 101, and I'm trying to get off on an exit to go to another party to drink some more. And there, a cop stopped me because I sort of swerved. Pulled me over, the Coldwater Canyon exit, I still remember it today. And I used to live right off of that, so I had to remember it every time I drove by it. Did the breathalyzer, did the whole thing, you're drunk. Got in the back of the car, I remember sobbing, remember the officer consoling me. I remember a lot. A lot of times I didn't remember when I was drunk, but God allowed me to remember this one.
Amen.
And I remember just thinking this was the end of my life. And I felt really bad. I'm 22 or so. I just felt really bad, and I felt I had let somebody down, but I couldn't figure out who it was. And so I never told my parents any of it. Friends bailed me out, But a friend of mine had just become a Christian from college, and he had moved out there too. And so he started telling me about, this Jesus, who I was like, oh, that's interesting. All right, eventually I'll give in, I'll go to a church. So I went to a church, and I went, you know what, I feel pretty good. I left the service, something about it just felt nice. So then I'd be depressed around Wednesday, and I was kind of looking forward to church, felt good.
Yeah.
Started finding the right church. Eventually started going to the First Baptist Church of Van Nuys with Jess Moody, which if you've been a Baptist a long time, you would know Jess Moody. Yeah. He was going through a sermon series on John, and he was going practically verse by verse through the whole thing. And at one point in there, he says, a lot of you argue the Bible, debate the Bible, but have you ever gone to read it?
No.
I think I ever have. So I went into my one-room efficiency apartment on Kittredge Boulevard, right off of Sepulveda, and I opened up, and there was that Bible I'd gotten at confirmation.
Wow.
Why would I pack that Bible and bring it to California? I have no idea, but there it was. Something inside me says God magically transported it there. Whatever, it was sitting there, and I pulled it out, and I opened it up, and I went, Old Testament. It's old. Read old. That's really the way I was thinking. Why do I want to read old? I want to read something new.
Yeah.
Matthew. Well, what's Matthew 1, verses 1 through 36? A boring genealogy, and in the King James, It's
Begat.
begat. I didn't even know what a begat was. begat. And I said, really?
Good stuff.
Is this the whole Bible?
Yeah.
And then my eye caught the birth of Jesus. And I went, oh, Christmas. I always loved Christmas. I loved like Little Drummer Boy. I loved Charlie Brown Christmas when Linus would quote Luke, which I didn't know what that was at the time. But I went, oh, yeah, Christmas. I know this story. I started reading that story, and someday look at it. There's a column and maybe a half, and it gets to chapter 2. By the time I had read that column and right here, I was on my knees sobbing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I had realized that God sent his son Jesus to come to this earth to save me. Me, not mankind, which I usually applied it to. He's here for all the other people, but not me. And by the time I'm, like looking at the wise men, I mean, I was in. I was totally, just as the wise men had brought gifts and they fell down in worship, I was worshiping. And there was something about that moment, and I'm always hesitant to sort of talk about it. There was something so powerful in that room that I felt if I had opened my eyes that I would die.
Wow.
And it was just a supernatural kind of presence at that moment. Now look, I needed it, okay? You guys were all 5, 8, 12 years old. I'm this hardened, drug-taking, drinking, party-loving guy, and I needed a right across the face, and I got it that night. And I remember going to look in the mirror, red face, sobbing, and I went and looked in the mirror, and I went, who is that guy in the mirror?
Wow.
It talks about you being a new person, a new creature. I was looking at someone that I had no idea who that was. I couldn't recognize. I still can see that person and still remember that feeling. And I went later to the church and I went, something weird happened. I was telling somebody. And they said, well, you got saved. I went, what? How do you get saved? Well, you did it. You surrendered your life to Jesus Christ at that moment. I went, I guess I did. It was interesting. Nobody had to tell you how to get saved, right? You were sort of learning it on your own. There's a process. Nobody had to necessarily come up to you and go, Tony, these are the steps to salvation. Yeah. There's something inside of you that wants it, right?
Absolutely.
And I experienced it that night. Well, it took a while for me to get over some of those bad habits that I had in my life. And, it wasn't until I really was healed from all of that I then felt the call to ministry.
Amen.
And I remember being drunk one time. I was saved. I remember being drunk one time and witnessing to a guy at a party. And I still remember, God allows you to remember some things, right?
You need to know
I remember
Jesus.
the guy's look on his face like, really? And then I went back and went, that's probably not the best way. Drunk witnessing is not going to work. And so, once I got the alcohol and everything healed and in control, I really felt God say, okay, now I can use you.
Yeah.
Amen.
Right?
Yeah.
Amen.
And so, that was the process 23 years ago here, getting called to this church and still not comfortable being like a pastor.
Right.
It's just a weird sort of feeling because I still remember that 22-year-old, whatever. I was a mess. But I'll tell you, it's an incredible journey, isn't
Amen.
it?
Yeah, it is.
Amen.
You just never know what's next, and where he's calling you, what he's going to do. And just so thankful for salvation.
Amen.
I
Amen.
really am. Even as
Amen.
you tell the story again, it just reminds you how of God's grace.
Absolutely.
So many of you listening here today, look, if he could save us, he
Amen.
could save you.
Yeah, that's right.
Amen.
So really do explore that. Explore what salvation means. Look, open up Matthew 1. Get past the genealogy. Start reading right now. That was my solution, but I'm just saying, God loves you. He sent his son for you, and he wants a relationship with you. And so just surrender and give your life. Look, if you've got a story and that's maybe interesting, maybe to make an impact in somebody's life, you send it to story at ourfamily.church and let us know what it is. We'd love to continue to share. We've had so many interesting stories so far. And then also this week, join us on Friday. We're going to have our worship. We're going to have communion. Great time for the whole church to get together. and experience and enjoy and celebrate what Jesus has done for us.
Amen.
Thanks for being here. Now go be the church.